But look at Black Lives Matter. It's a Chinese-directed communist operation. Burnt cities all over America. Killed many cops. Did huge damage. But you had churches taking a knee to them. Big corporations giving them lots of money. They have all this respectability. But it's a Chinese communist operation run out of the Chinese consulate in San Francisco. But it's a communist operation. But how many Americans understand that? So if they can't understand Black Lives Matter as a communist operation, when they talk about Marxism openly, how do you think most Americans understand that feminism is a communist operation? The LGBTQ movement is a communist operation. You look at the greats, Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan. Every one of them was a member of the Communist Party or Democratic Socialists of America. They were all communists. Emmeline Pankhurst, the great suffragette of the early 20s, who, the suffragettes were throwing themselves under horses to the king's horses in Britain, the races, to show their cause. Emmeline Pankhurst was a Communist Party member. They were all communist folks. All the leaders of the feminist movement were socialists or communists. Not saying they didn't have some grievances, of course they did. Just like Black Lives Matter has some legitimate grievances, a few. There is some exploitation of people by nasty capitalists sometimes. But if they can't find a legitimate grievance, they'll make one up. Absolutely, they'll make one up. So you look at the LGBTQ movement, started by a man called Harry Hay. He founded the Mattachine Society in the 1940s in Los Angeles to advocate for the rights of... They didn't even have a word gay. They didn't even call them homosexuals in those days. They called them things like peculiar or something like that. But he advocated for that movement. And then he built up a movement. And he was a member of the Communist Party. But he left the Communist Party, not because he was no longer a communist, because it was embarrassing to the Communist Party to have an open homosexual in their ranks at that time. Because social mores were different, and also they thought any homosexual in the ranks was liable to blackmail by the FBI. They might become an informant against the Communist Party. So he left, but they still called him a friend for many, many years. Then they had the Stonewall riots. The communists joined straight in on that. ACT UP, very famous radical communist group. It's run by Liberation Road. It's run by Socialist Workers' Party. All of these movements are communists. And in the 1970s, a group of radical leftists, mainly communists, got themselves entrenched in the American Psychological Association and got the definition of homosexuality changed from a mental disorder to just a variation, a sexual variation. And that gave the homosexual movement the opportunity to start spreading their tentacles into everything. Homosexuals are 1 to 2% of the population. And I got nothing against them. I wish them well, But you'd think they were 50% of the population by the amount of power that they have. They have a hell of a lot more power than most of you guys have. Is that a fair comment? And it comes to the judiciary system. You know what kind of deal a man gets in the current judiciary system in this country, and the courts, etc. The radical feminists took over the courts. The homosexuals got involved because they are activists. This is all they do all day long. The adoption system. In New Zealand, where I come from, the radical feminists took over the adoption system. We used to have, I think, 12,000 abortions a year and about 4,000 to 10,000 adoptions a year in New Zealand. The feminists took it over. There's now 100 adoptions a year and 17,000 abortions. The feminists do not want adoption. They do not want kids growing up in good families. They want either abortion or people growing up in welfare families. That is what they want. So feminism has been attacking the family in every opportunity they possibly can.